Well, grace and peace be to you. Such a blessing to be here and be with you all. Just wish for God's blessing on each one as we gather here. And I guess probably be good to open in a prayer. Is there any prayer requests? I know Brother Robert Kane is sick with a cough and a sore throat, so we'll pray for him. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, we can stand and pray. Oh God, we come before you with thankfulness this morning. We thank you so much for what you do for us and how that you are a Father over us, gently guiding us and trying to lead us through this life of struggles and challenges. And oh God, we pray that we can just somehow prove ourselves faithful, that we can work out our salvation with fear and trembling in your sight. Oh God, we desire to be filled with your Spirit as we look into your word and to your ways, and help us to have a better understanding of you and the purpose of your ministry and how that you want us to follow in your steps. Pray now for those ones that can't be here and the sicknesses. Pray for Brother Robert Keane that you just comfort him this very minute, that he could be relieved from his pain and sore throat. And Lloyd, his situation, just be with them. And with Dwayne's family, just help the sicknesses there. And commit all these things in your care and pray in Jesus' name. Just have a few opening thoughts concerning parables. Just found it very interesting to think about the value of parables, the things that I've gleaned from them, the things that are kind of profound about them. I find it very interesting how Jesus taught in these ways. It seems like he spoke very frank on the Sermon on the Mount, things that are easily understood, things that these people that were around him were, it was really life-changing and stuff, but I think of the parables as being able to bring forth the same fruit, but they're different in their nature, in how there's something you have to just kind of think about them. And the more I think about them, the more I do get understanding of them more maybe, but there's still, I'm always left with knowing that there's possibly more in them that I just haven't gleaned yet. And so I want to put that out there as something that's really, really good to think about. Parables. You might call it the second most important thing that Jesus talked about. Sermon on the Mount, of course, the very most important thing. There's so many things in there about, like, you might call it like human stories, but they have these great heavenly values in them. And it's so important that we get this thing, I think, because we see what happened with those people that were offended by him. The Pharisees were really, really offended by these parables. At one point, I guess I might not have this quite straight, but I think it was kind of in the context where they realized, oh, he's speaking about us in these parables. And it got to him. It upset him. So we have to let those parables that he spoke about, we have to let them refine us. We have to let them do their proper work. We have to know that they always have a good moral to them. I think that's probably what the Pharisees, they just didn't understand that. They didn't want to understand that. That's why they took offense at it. This wasn't a new thing. It was not at all new to have a teacher in front of them speaking in this kind of way. The prophets of old did it. Because I think when I'm speaking about parables, I'm talking about something that's really kind of stretched out and broad. Some of the parables that Jesus talked about are lengthy, like they're really long. They're maybe a whole page talking about different seeds and different things about certain seeds. If they fall by the way, then it's because of this. And then others are just more like one-liners. I call them one-liners. Like, let's see. Except a grain of wheat, die, it abideth alone. Lots of value in just thinking about that. Like just think about what all you could be gleaned out of just one line like that, or a big thing that I have noticed for myself is like just the principle of if your right hand offend thee, cut it off. Just a lot in there that you might call it a little parable or a little phrase with a good moral. And those things are very valuable. Because I believe Jesus came and he wants people to seek after him. And this gives us a purpose to seek after him. This gives us a reason to every day have something good to ponder on. I had to discipline myself last week, just having some thoughts that I had to just forsake. It just wasn't good. It just wasn't getting me. It wasn't edifying my soul. And I think a good replacement would be thinking about parables. I think that might be one of the intents about parables, so that we have something good to think about. And see, that's just another goodness of God, another goodness of Jesus. His arm isn't so short that it doesn't help us. He wants to reach out. He wants to help us. And he gave us parables to think about. The Old Testament had them. Long ones, short ones. Proverbs, things, there are one-liners in there that could be called little stories that have a moral to them, a good moral to them. And even the Old Testament, there was, I can learn from I had to think about, and I looked up the story about Nathan going to King David with this story. That could be called a parable. He went to King David with this story after David had terribly sinned. He came to him and told him this story of a rich man that had lots of sheep, I think it says. And then there was a poor man with one sheep. This one precious lamb that he had, and then there was a third man, and this man came by and he needed to be fed, I think is kind of the story. Or was there a man, I think maybe there was a man that needed a sheep to be hospitable, and he went and demanded this sheep from this man that had one sheep. Give me this sheep, and he did. Anyhow, at the end of the story, King David was like enraged, like this is so unjust, this is terrible and bad. But the intent of this was for Nathan to be like, but now look, this is you. This is you, David. And he was humble. He seen his error, and he took this story and realized that he was the man that took from the man. Even though there was many other things that could have been done, he took from the man that had one sheep, and he used him bad, and he repented. And so that was a great way for the prophet Nathan to come to the great king, and with a simple message of a story to bring out the underlying root that was in David's life. And these things can work that way. If there's a parable with a lesson, and if there's a heart that's repentant, and then it can bring forth fruit. But if we're like the Pharisees, we're going to take offense and like, oh, he's just pointing at us with these things, and it won't bring forth a good fruit. Another one I wanted to read was in Isaiah 5. Maybe we'll go to that one. It's something we can learn from, I think. I'll read from Isaiah 5, 1 through 7. Now I will sing to my well-beloved a song of my beloved touching his vineyard. My well-beloved hath a vineyard in a very fruitful hill, and he fenced it in, and gathered out the stones thereof, and planted it, and with the joyous vine, and built a tower in the midst of it, and also made a vineyard press therein, and he looked that it should bring forth grapes, and it brought forth wild grapes. And now, O inhabitants of Jerusalem and men of Judah, judge, I pray you, betwixt me and my vineyard. What could have been done more in my vineyard that I have not done in it? Wherefore, when I looked that it should bring forth grapes, brought it forth wild grapes? And now go to, I will tell you what I will do to my vineyard. I will take away the hedge thereof, and it shall be eaten up, and break down the wall thereof, and it shall be trodden down. And I will lie it waste. It shall not be pruned, nor digged, but there shall come up briars and thorns. I will also command the clouds that they rain no rain upon it. For the vineyard of the Lord of hosts is the house of Israel, and a man of Judah has pleasant plan. And he looked for judgment, but behold oppression, for righteousness, but behold a cry. Just one of them. I don't even really search that deep for the actual lesson, but just one of them that we can think about that Isaiah took to make a story and bring out a point. I have found different ones in the Old Testament. I didn't really know how to explain them, but I just thought I'd read this one. How that there's just numerous ways that people in the Old spoke in such language to bring out a point. It's very valuable. And so I'm just saying that because I think this wasn't that new for Jesus' disciples to hear this and to hear parables being spoken about. What I like about Jesus' parables is how they come after the Sermon on the Mount, after the things that he spoke, and we can kind of blend the two, I believe, blend the two and really find lots of things, lots of help for us to help us live out the Sermon on the Mount. Let's see. Let's go to Matthew 9. Matthew 13 seems to be kind of the parable chapter for me, but let's read a few of these. In Matthew 9, I'll read a little bit. Verse 12. There's the one that I mentioned earlier. But when Jesus heard that, he said unto them, they that be whole need not a physician, but they that are sick. Maybe I'll read verse 10 too and 11. And it came to pass, as Jesus sat at meat in the house, behold, many publicans and sinners came and sat down with him and his disciples. Just have a thought about that. I don't know if I heard it lately, but we hear lots of people from the world saying how that, well, Jesus, he sat down with the publicans and the sinners and he ate with them, and he was right with them and stuff. But what I'm seeing just now is that Jesus sat down in the house. It says he sat down in the house. And behold, many publicans and sinners came and sat with him. A little difference there. Even though I think there's truth in the fact that Jesus did mingle with publicans and sinners, not with their sin, but with them. I just want to bear in mind that it does not say here that he just went and sat down with them and sinned with them. It says he sat down and then they came to him. There's something about him that I guess drew them to him, or drew them together. 11. And when the Pharisees saw it, they said unto his disciples, Why eateth your master with publicans and sinners? But when Jesus heard that, he said unto them, They that be whole need not a physician, but they that are sick. That was his way to answer the Pharisees' questions. Not at all a clear yes or no, or not at all a clear definition of why he's doing this. But a better than that answer. A better than that answer. Something for them to chew on. Something for them to think about. Verse 13. But go ye and learn what that parable meaneth. I will have mercy and not sacrifice. For I am not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance. This might have been the beginning of them thinking about that he's talking about them. I think it was quite later when they realized that this kind of speech is pointed at them. But I mean, it was up to them. They could have taken it the way King David did and be like, yeah, it is, and it does apply, and then repent and bring forth fruits of righteousness. But they weren't that way. They took it the wrong way. Verse 14, Then came to him the disciples of John, saying, Why do we and the Pharisees fast oft, but thy disciples fast not? And Jesus said unto them, Can the children of the bright chamber mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them? But the days will come when the bridegroom shall be taken from them, and then shall they fast. So his disciples, or actually the disciples of John, had this question. And again, it was answered in a way that had them thinking about it. It had them thinking about the purpose of Jesus being here, I believe. Verse 16. No man putteth a new piece of cloth upon an old garment, for that which is put in to fill up taketh from the garment, and the rent is made worse. Neither do men put new wine into old bottles, else the bottles break, and the new wine runneth out, and the bottles perish, but they put new wine into new bottles, and both are preserved. Lots of lessons in there. Think about that next week when you have those moments that you are trying to keep good thoughts in your mind. Now let's go to 13, Matthew 13. Here, I might just read quite a lot of this, see where it goes. Okay. Verse 1. The same day went Jesus out of the house, and sat by the seaside, and great multitudes were gathered together unto him, so that he went into a ship and sat, and the whole multitude stood on the shore. Another scene, a little bit like the sermon that he preached on the mountain. Like it was this arranged thing, I believe. Like he was in the ship and he sat down, the whole multitude was scattered on the beach, and there was this arranged thing, and then he started speaking in these very profitable ways. And he spoke many things unto them in parables, saying, Behold, a sower went forth to sow. And when he sowed, some seeds fell by the wayside, and the fowls came and devoured them up. Some fell upon stony places, where they had not much earth, and forthwith they sprang up, because they had no depth of earth. And when the sun was up, they were scorched. And because they had not root, they withered away. And some fell among thorns, and the thorns sprung up and choked them. But other fell into the good ground, and brought forth fruit, some 100-fold, some 60, and some 30. Who has ears to hear, let him hear. And the disciples came and said unto him, Why speakest thou unto them in parables? He answereth and saith unto them, Because it is given unto you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but unto them it is not given. I open that up for someone to expound on it. I don't really have a clear understanding of it. Jesus making this distinction between the disciples and the rest of the multitude. Like the disciples might have proved themselves having more understanding than the rest of the people. 12. For whosoever hath, to him shall be given, and he shall have more abundant. But whosoever hath not, from him shall be taken away even that he hath. Therefore speak I to them in parables, because they, seeing, see not, hearing, hear not, neither they understand. And in them is fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah, which saith, By hearing ye shall hear, and shall not understand. And seeing ye shall see, and shall not perceive. For this people's heart is waxed gross, and their ears are dull of hearing, and their eyes they have closed, lest at any time they should see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and should understand with their heart, and should be converted, and I should heal them. But blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. Maybe this is the distinction. I can't quite understand the actual scene of all that. Like, maybe the disciples were with Jesus in the boat, and there was time for them and Jesus to have more of a private conversation, and they were asking him, why did you speak to them in parables? And then he was like, well, their heart is gross and waxed. Blessed are your eyes, for you see, your ears, for you hear. I don't know. That's what it kind of seems to me like. Yeah. Very good. 17. For verily I say unto you that many prophets and righteous men have desired to see these things which ye see, and have not seen them, and to hear those things which ye hear, and have not heard them. Hear ye therefore the parable of the sower. When anyone heareth the word of the kingdom, and understandeth it, then cometh the wicked one, and catcheth away that which was sown in his heart. This is he which receives seed by the wayside. But he that receiveth the seed into the stony place, the same is he that heareth the word, and anon with joy receiveth it. Yet hath he not root in himself, but dureth for a while. For when tribulation or persecution ariseth because of the word, by and by he is offended. He also that receiveth seed among the thorns is he that heareth the word, and the cares of this world, and the deceitfulness of riches, choke the word, and he becometh unfruitful. But he that receiveth seed into the good ground is he that heareth the word, and understandeth it, which also bringeth forth fruit. No, which also beareth fruit, and bringeth forth some an hundredfold, some 60, some 30. And other parables put he forth unto them, saying, The kingdom of heaven is likened unto a man which soweth good seed in his field. But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat, and went his way. And when the blade was sprung up and brought forth fruit, then appeared the tares also. So the servants of the householder came and said unto him, Sir, didst not thou sow good seed in thy field? From whence then hath it tares? He saith unto them, An enemy hath done this. The servants say unto him, Wilt thou then that we go and gather them up? But he said, Nay, lest when ye gather up the tares, ye root up the wheat with them. Let them grow both unto the harvest. In the time of the harvest, I will say to the reapers, Gather ye together the first tares, and bind them in bundles to burn them, but gather the wheat into my barn. A lot could be said about that. I have thoughts about it. I think it pertains to life. It pertains to judgment to come. Verse 31. Another parable put he forth unto them, saying, The kingdom of heaven is like a grain of mustard seed, which a man took and sowed in his field, which indeed is the least of all seeds, but when it is grown, it is the greatest among herbs, and becometh a tree, so that the birds of the air come and lodge in the branches thereof. Another parable spake he unto them, The kingdom of heaven is like unto leaven, which a man took and hid in 3 measures of meal, till the whole was leavened. All these things spake Jesus unto the multitude in parables, and without his parable spake he not unto them, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophet, saying, I will open my mouth in parables, I will utter things which have been kept secret from the foundation of the world. I'll probably just read the rest of the chapter. Then Jesus sent the multitude away, and went into the house, and his disciples came unto him, saying, Declare unto us the parable of the tares in the tares of the field. He answered and said unto them, He that soweth the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world, the good seed are the children of the kingdom, but the tares are the children of the wicked one. Something really inspiring to me about Jesus' parables is a lot of them are actually explained. A lot of them he actually goes, at least to the disciples, he goes and explains it to them. And that again is just the goodness of God and the goodness of our Savior Jesus. And if we come to his feet, he's willing to make himself known. But I think, like, if you can think about this as there were the disciples gathering in his house, not caring to be numbered with him. And I just have this vision of the Pharisees being outside, already kind of stirred in their spirit, speaking without respect of him. And in that way, they just could not understand all this, because they weren't willing to just sit at his feet and ask him the humble question of, declare unto us this parable. They just wouldn't do that. And if we don't come close to doing that, we're going to lose out on these valuable meanings, I believe. 39. The enemy that sowed them is the devil. The devil planted the tares. The harvest is the end of the world, and the reapers are the angels. As therefore the tares are gathered and burned in the fire, so shall it be in the end of this world. The Son of Man shall sent forth his angels, and they shall gather out of his kingdom all things that offend, and them which do iniquity, and they shall cast them into a furnace of fire. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then shall the righteous shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Who hath ears to hear, let him hear. Again, the kingdom of heaven is likened to treasure hid in a field, the which when a man hath found, he hideth, and for joy thereof goeth and selleth all that he has, and buyeth that field. It's like once we've figured out that this thing that we're seeking after is wrapped up in the Gospels of Jesus. Like we're willing to forsake all other literature maybe that is not valuable, like things that we've read before, and it's like this is just not fulfilling. Once we've figured out that what's fulfilling is really wrapped up in these four Gospels, or maybe the Sermon on the Mount, or maybe in these parables, we're willing to set those books aside and read the real stuff. That's what I can learn from it. 45. Again, the kingdom of heaven is likened to a merchant man seeking goodly pearls, who, when he had found one pearl of great price, went and sold all that he had and bought it. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like unto a net that was cast into the sea and gathered out of every kind, which, when it was full, they drew to shore, sat down and gathered the good into vessels, but cast the bad away. So shall it be at the end of the world. The angels shall come forth and sever the wicked from the just, and shall cast them into the furnace of fire. There shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth. Jesus saith unto them, Have ye understood all these things? They say unto him, Yea, Lord. Then said he unto them, Therefore every scribe which is instructed unto the kingdom of heaven is likened to a man that is an householder, which bringeth forth out of his treasure things new and old. And it came to pass that when Jesus had finished these sayings, he departed thence. And when he was come into his own country, he taught them in their synagogue, insomuch that they were astonished and said, Whence hath this man this wisdom and these mighty works? Is not this the carpenter's son? Is not this mother called Mary, and his brethren James, Joas, Simon, and Judas? And his sisters, are they not all with us? Whence then hath this man all these things? And they were offended in him. But Jesus said unto them, A parable is not without honor, save in his a prophet, is not without honor, save in his own country and in his own house. And he did not many mighty works there because of their unbelief. So, let's leave it at that. Just want to open it up, I guess.
Yeah, I appreciate these thoughts about parables. I like the parables. I guess I like stories, but I like likenesses of things. And it shows me a couple things. The fact that Jesus used parables, and he said why he uses parables there, and I've wondered often about that too. Like, the way it reads, it almost makes it sound like he spoke parables to try to hide something from people, but I think it's saying he was trying to reveal it to people without understanding. It's just, especially in the King James, I think it reads a little confusing. But But it does show that Jesus noticed little things in nature, like here's the God of the universe, the creator of all things, and it seems like he comes down here and takes on human flesh and becomes in the form of a man, and maybe for, I could say maybe for the first time, but not like, just in a way it seems like from a human perspective he then looks at his creation, and notices maybe how things look from human perspective. But maybe it's the same. I just think it does speak for him, though, like that with the great mission that he had and all the things that he knew, that he walked on this earth and he noticed mustard seeds, he noticed the sparrows, he noticed the lilies, he noticed how things work, even how mankind does things, how they pour wine into wineskins. And I think sometimes and then on top of that, like, it seems like a lot of old literature that I read, people also speak in more of that kind of a way. Or this is not just old literature, but like sometimes I think about the way Job and his friends converse back and forth. No one speaks like that anymore. No one has a communication that you just in so many likenesses and parables try to express your point of view. At least it doesn't seem like we do, and I think maybe some of it is that at least I think there's a loss if we get to a point in our life, or if we're in an age, we might say, where we just rush through life and everything has become a fast-paced thing where you drive down the road at 80 miles an hour and you're not going to notice the things along your way that you did when you walked or rode a donkey or just drove in a carriage, or and these lessons in nature are good for us to think about. They're good ways for us to teach our children too. And I also think that they help us remember a lesson. For instance, like Jesus could have said, don't try to fit the old covenant into the new covenant. It just won't work. So he could have said that. It might have left an impression. People would have maybe remembered it. But then if he says, people don't pour new wine into old wineskins. Maybe I had said that wrong. Don't try to put the new covenant into the old covenant. But anyway, then when he says people don't put new wine into old wineskins, else the wineskins will burst and it'll all be gone. And all of a sudden a person visualizes something, like he can visualize that and it sticks in his mind, and he like, oh yeah. And that may not even be the only place that applies, but it's probably what Jesus was applying it to, trying to put life of the new covenant into an old covenant mindset. It didn't work. I just I like parables. I appreciate what was shared this morning.
Yeah, I appreciate parables too, but I'm not sure how they said this, but something to the fact when he started speaking, "Peace be in this house," or "Peace be unto you." And earlier this morning, I was reminded of somehow it rang in my mind about this peace, and if we don't have peace amongst ourselves, or if we don't have peace within ourselves, or we don't have peace with our spouses, we shouldn't expect God to be with us. And then I was just thinking about like how we are at peace with one another, and just encourage us to think about that. Maybe I should clarify, being peace with your spouse, this is like having arguments, or I'm not saying if a spouse is not in the faith that we cannot have absolute peace in that. That's not what I'm saying, but there's a place we don't have peace when things are not together, but that we are peaceable, or that we have the attributes of Jesus.